let's see what's going on now. We have what are we doing? Okay, so far in factoring, we have learned to factor out the greatest common factor. Ooh. Right? What else have we learned? To factor when a is equal to 1, right? So something like x squared plus 5x plus 6. That's when we say, okay, two numbers that multiply to equal 6 but add up to 5, right? And then we did factoring when a is prime but not equal to 1. So that was something like 2x squared plus 3x plus 5, right, where the a was prime. And then we learned to factor where a is a composite, which means it's not prime. So something like 4x squared plus 7x plus 3. Okay, that's what we've learned so far. Today, we're going to learn something called the difference of two squares. This is all factoring. And these are actually really easy. Okay, called the difference of two squares. And the reason it's called that is because when you look at it, you have two things that are what we call perfect squares. In other words, I can take the square root of them, and there's a difference. It's a minus sign. What else do you notice about this that's different than what we've looked at before? There's only two terms. Yeah, there's only two terms. Notice these all have three terms. The x term is missing. Okay, so when we see something, a polynomial that only has two terms, the x term is missing, and there's a minus between them, then we should be thinking the difference of two squares. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the square root of both of these numbers. So what's the square root of x squared? X squared. What times itself equals x squared? X. X. Right? Listen to the question. Don't just look at what your eyes are looking at. Right? Listen to the question. X times x is x squared. Then we're going to take the square root of 16, which is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. One of them gets a plus, one of them gets a minus, and we're done. Okay? Look, I'm just going to show you why this works. How do I check to see if I factored it correctly? We FOIL. Remember, we FOIL. That's how we check it. So we're going to FOIL it back out. X times x is x squared. And then I get minus 4x. And we get plus 4x. And we get minus 16. Well, notice this minus 4x and this plus 4x, they're going to just cancel all the way out. And we're left with x squared minus 16. Okay? So when we have something like this where it's the same number, but one is positive and one is negative, that middle part completely drops out of it every time. Okay? Get a little bit harder, but not much. Okay, let's look at another example. Let's look at 4x squared minus 25. There's only two terms, and it's a minus sign. So right away, I'm thinking perfect squares. What's the square root of 4x squared? What's the square root of 4? 2. What's the square root of x squared? X. So it's 2x. What's the square root of 25? 5. 5 in both. One gets a plus, one gets a minus, and we're done. It literally takes you 3 seconds to do this. Not all of it. Okay. Sometimes we do have to factor out a greatest common factor. For instance, let's do Let's do 48x squared minus, gotta think, 27. So the first reminder to me about the greatest common factor is that when I look at 48 and 27, they are not perfect squares. By perfect square, I mean I can take a whole number and multiply it by itself, right? 5 times 5, 2 times 2. I can't find a whole number multiplied by itself to equal 48, right? 6 times 6 is 36. 7 times 7 is 49. There's not a nice whole number there. So these are not perfect squares. That's a reminder to me to look for those greatest common factors. So we always want to start by looking for greatest common factors. What can I take out of both 48 and 27? So let's think it through. Does 2 go into 48? Does 2 go into 27? No, so 2 won't work. Does 3 go into 48? Yes? Yes, 3 goes into 48 16 times. Does 3 go into 27? How many times? All right, so I'm going to take a 3 out. Leaves me 16x squared minus 9. Okay. Now, are these perfect squares? Is 16 a perfect square? Is 9 a perfect square? Okay, so let's factor this. Don't forget about your 3. Square root of 16x squared is 4x. And the square root of 9 is 3. And we're done. Okay? I got a worksheet for you to try. You can do that, and then we'll go over the worksheet. Okay? Before we do that, we're going to go over our perfect squares from 1 to 20. I want you writing these down. Okay? Right, what is 1 squared? 1. 2 squared? 2 squared. 4, thank you. 3 squared. 4 squared. 5 squared. 6 squared. 7 squared. 8 squared. 9 squared. 10 squared. All right, so you should all know those. We're going to continue on. 11 squared. 121. 12 squared. 144. 13 squared. 169. 14 squared. 196. 15 squared. 225. 16 squared. 256. Now we get into the really hard ones. 17 squared. 289. 18 squared. 324. 19 squared. 361. 20 squared. 400.
Wait, did you memorize this or were you doing it like
No, I haven't memorized. Wow. And you're going to have them memorized because we're going to have a quiz on them Thursday. Okay, you're going to memorize these. You must memorize them. You will not be using a calculator. You will not even be allowed to calculate in your head. You must memorize them.
That's not fair.
I know.
I have short
17
term
times
memory.
17?
No.
You heard me, Miss Murray? I have short term memory. Like, I'm being serious.
Well, then study it during lunchtime on Thursday. Oh, it's before lunch. Study it during fourth period. Okay? Listen, most of you know up to this point.
Yeah.
20 is easy, right? Because the trick with that, right? 20 times 20, 2 times 2 is 4, and then you have 2 zeros. That's the trick when you're multiplying, right? If we did 20 times 30, 2 times 3 is 6, and I have 2 zeros. 600, okay? So really, you've got what? 7 of them that you have to memorize.
I got short-term memory.
Okay? So you have to memorize them. If I see you doing the calculations on your paper, I will take it away and I'll grade what you have. You have to memorize them. The reason we have to memorize them is so that when we're doing these problems, we immediately recognize the perfect squares. So I want to be able to have a factor like this, like 256x squared minus 169. You will immediately recognize that these are perfect squares. So this is 16x plus 13, 16x minus 13. You have to know your perfect squares. Okay? Now, your quiz. You will not be using a calculator. You will not be allowed to calculate it. Your quiz, I'll give it to you on a table. On one side, I'll have something like 4 squared, and then I'll have a blank, and you have to fill in the blank. But sometimes I'll have the blank over here. Right? So when you take it, you're going to put 16 here, but then you're going to put 13 squared on this side. They will not be in order. Okay?
So,
You have to have them memorized.
wow.
So this is a good opportunity for some of you to get 100 on this math quiz, because for some of you, you struggle with the concept. There's no concept here. It's not a matter of knowing what steps come next. You just have to study it. If you want a 100, you'll study it. We should at least get close to a good grade anyway. Even if you make a couple mistakes, you'll still get a good grade. But you have to study it. If you walk in here cold turkey, you will probably get 7 wrong, which means you'll get a 65 on your quiz. Just study it. Make flashcards. Make a Kahoot game. Okay? Drill each other.
Huh?
You have to memorize it. You don't know what drill each other means?
No.
Constantly do it with each other, like walking along. What's 3 square? What's 4 square? What's 5 square? The drill, math drills. You ever hear of math drills? Never heard that term? Yeah. Right. So that's your quiz on Thursday. Friday, we will have a test on factoring. We have a quiz Thursday and a test Friday
Why you doing this like this?
because we're ready.
You can't catch a break.
He's not ready.
Yes, you are.
Like,
Test Friday. The quiz Thursday will be easy.
we
Okay.
have so many tests.
I know. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then we have, this is 5th period. Then we have Monday. Okay, so I will not be here Friday, Monday, or Tuesday because my son's getting married in North Carolina, and I'm very excited. Right.
It's fine.
Okay. So you'll be taking the test Friday. Friday's a short period. Okay. Yes.
I won't be here Friday, so can I take the test on Monday?
You'll take the test on Monday. I'll leave a note with the sub. Okay. Yes. No. No. We'll have another one. Yes.
Where's North Carolina? It's supposed to be very
Raleigh.
This
Yeah.
is having going good. Isn't like this one got it perfect.
Well, after this
Girl,
one,
Look.
It is actually. How'd you know that?
I don't know. I feel like a lot of weddings,
Oh,
like
yeah.
in
Outer
North
Banks.
Carolina, are either on the beach.
I gotta watch that.
Yeah. No, they live in the like more in the mountains. Yeah, it's gonna be nice. All right. Questions. All right. So you know what your quiz is on Thursday. Hey, you guys have the advantage. Yours is Thursday. The 2nd period class is tomorrow. So you've got an extra day. Okay, so I've got a worksheet for you to work on. this is due this period. We will go over it and then we're going to do some more.
Every time we show the book,
5x.
Is there a greatest common factor?
3? Which one are you asking for?
Number one.
No.
Okay. Wow. Okay, now let's go ahead and factor it. You got it, Anna. Go ahead.
5x minus 3. And then plus 3.
There you go. Easy peasy. Drew, how about number 2?
3p plus 2 in one parentheses, and the other parentheses is 3p minus 2.
Good. Austin, number 3.
X plus 5 and x minus 5.
See how easy these are? Riley, number 4.
4a plus 4a minus
Good. Jaden, number 5.
5 plus 2. 5 minus 2.
Excellent. RJ, number 6.
and minus 3. And plus
There you go. Yes, sir. No, if you have the plus 3 first. Nope, doesn't matter. Okay, Lexi, number 7.
2 4b is a power of 2.
Okay.
2 plus 1. 2
Good. Excellent. Okay. TJ, number 8.
it's the greatest common factor of 2. And then it's b to the second minus 4. So it's 2. And then b plus 4, I mean plus 2. And b minus 2.
Excellent. Okay. Jackson, number 9. Okay. Okay, so if we do 3 as our greatest common factor, what are we left with inside? Right, x squared minus 1. So then this will factor as x plus 1, x minus 1. Okay. Mark, number 10. No. Is there a greatest common factor? Is there anything that goes into both 4 and 100? Yeah, what goes into 4 and 100? Keep going. How about 4? Yeah, so we get x squared minus 25. Now how's that going to factor? There you go. Great. Excellent job. Okay, anyone have questions? Remember, you're always going to take out your greatest common factor first. Okay? Okay, so the worksheet I'm going to give you now is practice with all the factoring that we learned except for what we just did. Okay? We're done, but this will probably take it over. Over? You don't want to ask me for an air conditioner.
I said all. Thank you.
You can work in the back corner there, that way you're not too close to TJ and Anna and get distracted. Okay, I'm going to go over the first one with you just to refresh your memory. Okay. Okay, what's hard about the factoring is like you can do each type as you learn it, but then when they're all together, it gets really hard. It's hard to know what to do, right? So what do we always start with? GCF, greatest common factor. So what is the greatest common factor on this one? Okay, so we take a 5 out, and we're left with 10x squared plus 11x minus 6. Okay. Now, if there is any number in front of the x squared other than 1, we're going to use the Murray method. So we're going to factor the 10x squared. Now I can either factor it as 1 and 10 or 2 and 5. So I'm just going to choose 2 and 5. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to 1 and 10. And then we're going to factor the negative 6. So I've got 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. So I'm going to choose the 2 and 3. Okay. One of them has to be negative. So I'll just make that 2 negative and we'll check and see if it works. When I cross multiply, I get 6. Oops, there's an x here. 6x plus negative 10x. So did that work? I get negative 4x. Didn't work, right? So we're going to switch it. Let's put the 3 up here and the 2 down here. I keep the 2 negative. So when we cross multiply, we get negative 4x plus 15x. Did that work?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now on your last quiz, a lot of you stopped here. You haven't factored it yet. All you've done is the guess and check part. You haven't actually told me what the factors are. So we have to go back and make sure we write the factors. Don't forget about your 5 here. So we have 5. We have 2 parentheses. We're going to go straight across. 2x plus 3, 5x minus 2. And now we're done. Okay. So that's what the rest of this worksheet is. So you're going to do this the rest of the period. When you're finished, you're going to upload it to Google Classroom, please. And you're going to do your own work, everybody.
Yes, Mary.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, I'll use a calculator. Like big
Yes,
numbers.
absolutely. Okay, I'm missing 3 calculators, so if you have one that you forgot to return, please make sure you do that.